നോക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. കുര്യൻ സാർ കേൾക്കോ? കുര്യൻ സാറിനെ ആളുകളെ തിരക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
స్టార్ట్ కాలేదంట. మైక్ ఏమన్నా ఇప్పుడు కొద్ది బెటర్.
Good morning, Gobi.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
So, how did it go on in the second session in the evening?
Yeah, it went on very well.
Good. Because, I had to go back home. So, I attended inaugural address.
Oh.
And then, it's a long drive. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
PPT.
Yeah, good morning, Professor Gopinath.
How are you, Jose?
Fine.
Yeah, yesterday you spoke well about the...
Yesterday, our keynote address super, isn't it?
Yes.
You say hello to Professor Adi is there. Adi.
Is there today also?
Yeah, no, Adi is there. Professor from, yeah. Yeah, please, you say Professor Gopinath Reddy is from Hyderabad.
Hello, sir. ఇక్కడ పీపీటీ నెట్లోకి వెళ్ళి బ్యాక్ వెళ్ళి ఇది పీపీటీ ఇది మొన్నలాగా I'm setting my PPT, Jose.
Yeah, fine.
So, good morning, sir. Pallidare, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Fine.
Nice to see you from Pondicherry.
Now I am in Gandhigram, not in Pondicherry.
Really?
Yeah.
It's only temporary going back, or?
Yeah. I mean, once in 15 days I have to go there. That's all.
Oh, taking some classes still there?
Not taking classes, guiding the projects.
Okay, sir. How is Professor Raghupati?
Raghupati is fine.
Good. I think you have to conduct now some seminar, not virtual mode, I think real mode.
If it is fine, I can invite you to Pondicherry.
Yes, sir. I want to come to Pondicherry only.
Please do come. I will invite you.
Yes, certainly, because I have never seen Pondicherry.
Yeah, please come.
Professor Gopinath Reddy, then, you can put it in that, now it is clear. So, it is actually this, PPT mode.
Jose, could you see my PPT?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Shall I close it now?
Super.
Yeah, just.
Close this.
Oh, you become an expert. Slow model alle.
No, I'm taking help of my computer assistant.
That we know.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I won't disappoint you. I've never become wiser. I'm as ignorant or as wise as you are regarding computers.
No, we are all a technologically challenged person.
You want to say that your Chathakulam is one among them?
No, you are,
Now Kathakulam is a leader in South India as far as webinars are concerned.
yeah, more dynamic.
Very dynamic, and he's putting a lot of pressure on all of us.
Yeah. That is the thing, because he's making everyone work.
Everyone work, and he's not allowing us to relax in COVID time also.
Yeah. So during COVID time, he is more active.
Exactly, sir. He found out a very good mode of interacting with people and making. One good thing he's doing is that he's making us to forget COVID implications.
Yeah.
Except seminars only. Otherwise, we are forgetting, because all the time he's telling you prepare a paper, you do that.
Yeah.
Sir, today you'll not believe, Hyderabad is around 12 degrees cold. Then I got up 6:30 to finish my morning walk. People were telling, you are crazy, you are coming 6:30. I said, Baba, I have a webinar, I have to go. Every day I come to office 11. Today I was here 9:30, sir. Imagine.
Okay. Yeah.
The kind of troubles Jose is
Professor
giving to all of us.
Professor John Mulakat, good morning.
So John,
good morning to good. Hello, Gopi. Good morning.
How are you? Good. Yesterday it was a very good session, inaugural session.
And unfortunately, our VC was in Hyderabad.
I heard saying you that he was in Hyderabad and he tried to roam in. I think he could not find.
Yeah, he could not. He said he will join the valedictory then. Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Good news.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. After a long time, yes. Yeah. How are you these days? Are you still with the Pondicherry group or?
Yeah. Pondicherry. Once in 15 days, I'm visiting Pondicherry.
Okay.
Stay there for a few days, and then I'll come back to Gandhigram.
Okay, great. Yeah. So you are still. Your house is still in Gandhigram. Yeah.
Gandhigram. Yeah.
Gandhigram has got a good score, it seems, in the Stanford exercise.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Very good score.
Very good.
And Jose wrote an article in
Hindu.
In Hindu,
I saw that. Because of this presentation, I could not read it. I will read now after this.
It's a good article.
Now he has become expert in this evaluating the science ranking, social science rankings. I think he should help UGC.
UGC wants nobody's help.
Nobody can help UGC nowadays. That's why Jose is entering into science ranking, not social science ranking.
No, that is a report evaluating only science.
Yeah, I know.
Good morning, Dr. Seema Fernandes. Good morning. How is Goa?
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Very good morning.
Good morning,
Dr. Ajusi Joseph. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Goa is good so far.
Goa, I think, is the least number of COVID cases.
Yes, sir. Now the testing has been reduced, but there are. But we are much better perhaps than the others.
Yeah, so that is very surprising. Being a tourist, of course, maybe tourists might have been contained now.
Yeah, see, Professor Gopinath Reddy, we have another very excellent experience from the Indian side. You take the Lakshadweep Islands, not even a single positive case in Lakshadweep Islands, and of course, we we have a presentation on Lakshadweep Islands.
Okay.
And during the time of smallpox, there was no space in Lakshadweep to actually bury their dead bodies. That was the situation. From that, they learned a lot of experience and health practices. And
great.
not even a single one from Lakshadweep administration, because every time they are commuting Kerala and Goa, Mangalore, or to Lakshadweep, things there. But that much of management through mainly because of the 10 deep island panchayats. That is
great.
And one person from Chethalam Island, he is making a presentation on the case of Lakshadweep.
Great. I think maybe once you finish this seminar, I think bringing out a volume would be very interesting, because of you are covering most of the states as well as some of the international experiences. I think this would be very useful volume actually.
Yeah,
what do you say, John?
Yes.
Reaching the time. Now it is 9:59. We can have
Has Dr. Vijayalakshmi joined?
Long back, 20 minutes back.
First
great.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
madam. Good morning, madam.
Good morning.
Good night from Mexico.
Nice to see all people in the morning.
Yeah.
Has Dr. Addy come?
Yes, she is here. She has joined already.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Great. శ్రీధర్ నువ్వు మాట్లాడు బ్రదర్ నేను ఇట్లా మీటింగ్లో ఉన్నాను, ఏంటో కనుక్కో అర్జెంట్ లేకపోతే వాట్సాప్ మెసేజ్ ఇవ్వు. So now it is 10.
Jose, shall we begin maybe with the preliminaries?
Yes, you just tell, Dr. Uma, we can start. Fine,
Okay, sir. Shall I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Before I start, may I request everyone who's joined us to please mute your mics throughout these sessions. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all our participants who have joined us from across the world, different time zones. My name is Uma Purushothaman, and I teach at the Department of International Relations and Politics at the Central University of Kerala. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all the distinguished delegates to this very timely international conference on rethinking the role of local governments in a post-COVID world, which is being organized by the Center for Guardian Studies, Central University of Kerala, and the Center for Rural Management. And I especially welcome you to the second technical session, which starts at 10 o'clock, which is titled Livelihood Issues and Local Government Responses. Our chair for this session is Dr. Vijayalakshmi V, who is the joint editor of the Southern Economist. We thank you, ma'am, for graciously accepting our request to chair this session. I'll now hand over the charge to you, ma'am, to conduct the proceedings of this session. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning to all. Can you hear me?
Yes. You can hear, ma'am. You're loud and clear. Yes.
Now, this has been a very important topic, especially when we are not able to do much in terms of meeting or discussion, but the internet has helped us to contact irrespective of that problem. Now, talking about livelihood, it is not just rural area, it's more a widespread problem. Agriculture allied sector which employs over 50% of the workforce in the country, had problem because rabi crop, which had to be harvested, was delayed due to the non-availability of labor, machinery, transport, and restrictions on movement of the goods. 85% of India's farmers being small and marginal, with less than 2 hectares of land, and over 9 million active fishers depending on fisheries, where 80% of these term are small fisheries. The problem is great. And tribal communities had a different problem because these forest products, non-agricultural products, which they were collecting, like medicinal herbs, flowers, everything, they could not give it because collection agents would not come and they could not market them. And migrant laborers had a different problem because of exodus. With a short notice, they could not reach their place because of non-available transport, and some arrangements were made. With all these problems, first to assist was a community, whether it is urban or rural. It is local community which helped people. So today's topic is livelihood, where the experts are talking about this. So can I welcome Dr. Paranit Rai to talk on welfare of local government and responsible well-being?
Yeah. Good morning to every one of you. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You are hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chairperson, Dr. Jose, Dr. John, and my dear friends, really I feel happy to be with you in this webinar. It's very interesting, and all through in our life, not more than 3 decades, we have been working on area. More specifically, decentralization. In the pandemic period, what is the role of local government? How local government is so effective? These are all the very important, and I thank profusely my colleagues, Dr. Jose and Dr. John, for having, taken initiative to ponder over an important topic which is relevant to the context. And basically, we have been considered as, fundamentalist of Panchayat Raj or decentralization, because all through we have been writing and speaking and advocating for devolution of powers and decentralization of powers. But of course, we consider ourselves as biradaris of, Panchayati Raj. Being a researcher, always look for what is emerging from the field. We have been writing, contextually now in the pandemic period, what is emerging. That is why I have given a title, welfare, local government, and responsible well-being. In the context of globalization, the state has given up many of the responsibilities, the core responsibilities of a welfare state. But while going through the functioning and the performances and the activities of the panchayats, in the rural areas, what I found, it is very remarkable. We have our own weaknesses in strengthening the grassroots institutions, because normally the state is not strengthening people's institutions. So in that context, if you look at the government of Tamil Nadu, or even politics in Tamil Nadu, which is not favorable, towards strengthening Panchayat Raj or strengthening local governance. Even to conduct election for local body, we have to fight in the court, getting direction from the court. Election will be conducted for local bodies. That is the situation in Tamil Nadu. Even if you look back, if you go through the history, even for 64th amendment, a powerful resistance was given by, it was defeated even by the Tamil Nadu political parties in parliament. Even in 73rd, when it was passed, the first resistance came only from the two forces, the ADMK and DMK. That is the condition with which local bodies are functioning. But one thing is very positive in Tamil Nadu. What is positive? Confirming the constitutional provision. In form, you find Panchayat Raj. In content and spirit, I mean, it is missing. That is a problem always we look at. But at the same time, if you look at the performances, the panchayats are performing. Panchayats are performing with great difficulty by facing all kinds of challenges. So during the pandemic period, I have been watching what are all the functions being carried out by the local governments. Some of the, the panchayat leaders. The achievements of those panchayats have been highlighted in all the electronic media as well as the print media. What are all the core responsibilities of welfare state? I mean, that responsibilities have been performed by the Gram Panchayats in Tamil Nadu. But it is not all the panchayats that one has to notice, because that aspect one has to notice. Wherever we find a leader with a capacity, with a perspective, with an understanding, with awakening, with a consciousness, that leader is able to, galvanize the support of the community and assumed more responsibilities. There are two responsibilities. One is assigned responsibilities by the state through GOs, through orders, and through laws. But whereas, the panchayat leaders, if they have leadership quality and they assume certain other responsibilities on their own, they carry out activities without getting any direction from the government or the higher officials. But I found that many of the panchayat leaders, those who have performed very well, when I interact with them, what I found, they are all minister material. They couldn't find a space elsewhere. They concentrated on panchayat. There they performed, got the support of the community. And not only that, in the whole process of lockdown, during the lockdown period, continuous interaction with the households, the women self-help group, by following all the norms through the volunteers developed by the panchayat leaders. Excellent awareness creation activity has been done. As a result, finally they have come to the level that it is a responsibility of the community to safeguard our own well-being. So whether it is cleanliness, taking potable water, clean drinking water, after heating it, all kinds of precautions, all kinds of advocacies, what they have done in the Gram Panchayat, the community has responded very well. So as a result, if panchayats are in a position to do such a kind of work everywhere, we find, there is a possibility for creating such a kind of, perspective among the people, that the well-being is in the hands of the community, the well-being is in the hands of everyone. Look at the activities. Number one, totally they declared that, there is no hunger in that panchayat. There is no hunger in that panchayat. And safeguarding the entire territory of the village panchayat. Say for instance, if there are 3 roads during the lockdown, all the 3 roads are blocked continuously, and they put a check post. The volunteers have been nominated, and they have been given the identity card, and they are in charge of the protecting the village. And whoever is coming, because in Tamil Nadu, there is no distress migration. Very few coming from the cities to the rural areas. It is because of the lockdown in Chennai. When they come, immediately they are being checked, stopped and checked. And apart from this, I mean, the livelihood issues, agriculture is not affected during the lockdown period because they lifted a lockdown, because they protected the entire village. All agriculture activities had been carried out in the village without any hindrance. In such a way, they did it. Then, apart from this, whoever is coming from the cities and towns to that village, because I mean, lockdown has been announced, so they moved slowly to the villages. What they did, the community hall has been opened, and community hall has been considered as a quarantine. Actually, quarantine center is elsewhere, and they do it because they created on their own, and they never received any order because quarantine center is elsewhere, and people to be quarantined have to I mean, sent to those quarantine centers. But the village panchayat presidents, some of the panchayat presidents, they move beyond the order of the government. They created those centers. Once the tested is over, if they are negative, I mean, they put them in the community center. 15 days they have been observed. Then,
Minister, you have 2 minutes.
okay. Uh, then, whether it is, the protocol to be followed, the entire health protocol to be followed on livelihood issues, entire activities had been taken over by the panchayat without getting any direction from the state government, without bothering the money involved in it. They did it on their own, and they managed all those things. It is because of the leadership quality. Because I tested in all those places, extraordinary individuals, they are all, but they are all panchayat presidents. The number may be very less. Then, what is the takeaway from this exercise? From all those panchayat, they excelled because government, actually sculled out those achievement panchayats as the best panchayats, performing very well, managing the pandemic period very well. Yet, I have one takeaway from those things. Number one, the panchayat emerges as a welfare panchayat. I mean, even though the state is, discarding the core responsibilities. Number two, community takes a responsibility of managing their health issues and using, the public health centers. Previously, that was not the culture. They go to private institutions. The pandemic period completely changed the scenario and rely on the government institutions, not the private institutions. This is the second one. Is the third aspect is, this is the most significant aspect in the training program. What is more important is, the leadership training is more important. It is not the training on administering panchayat. It is not training on GPDP. These are all very essential. Apart from this, the leadership training is more important. A new framework of training at every level for conducting training for panchayat leaders. This is most important thing. If that kind of leadership training is taken up in all training institutions, there will be a paradigm shift of training programs that will create more of local leaders. Because now, the whole meaning of leadership is rulership. But this leadership, the local leadership, proves that it is democratic, collective, people centric, not power centric, not, individual centric. It is collective centric. In such a way they work. So local, government training institutions have to have a thinking on how to reshape the training program for the elected representatives. The leadership comes, foremost. If they reshape the training program, such a kind of leaders, they are considered as transformational leader. So transformational leadership culture could be created at a local level. However limited powers that they are enjoying, they work on assumed powers rather than assigned functions or assigned powers. So in that context, the leadership plays a very important role, for which the training institutions and the training policy and the training framework has to be changed, which is the fundamental, very essential thing to be done in the post-pandemic period. Thank you, the chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to briefly speak to you on this very important subject. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very effective presentation. I hope all Gram Panchayat follow these effective leaders. Thank you. Now, can I call Mr. Professor Gopinath Reddy to talk on institution of village volunteers in Andhra Pradesh?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. In a minute, my PPT is being set. So, yeah. Can you able to
Yes,
hear?
yes, it is.
Yeah. Good morning to everyone, particularly to Ma'am Chairperson Vijay Lakshmi Garu and the organizers, Jose Chatukulam and my good friend Professor John from Central University, Kasaragod, and Dr. Purushottam, and very respected panelists from all over, and also other participants in this. Ma'am, at the very beginning, let me give two small explanations regarding my paper. One is this is not my presentation is not going to be, unfortunately, is not going to be on the livelihoods issues. Number one, I do not know why Jose has put me in this, but it is something related to one institution, that is institution of village volunteers in Andhra Pradesh. Once again, this institution of village volunteers is not exactly the PRI. So they have come because the PRIs are not there. So this is with these two minor explanations. I will just go on presenting. But there is at the end I will show how there is a synergy between these institution of village volunteers and PRIs, and why village volunteers had to come in the place of PRIs. I will try to explain, and then how the entire institution of volunteers in the absence of PRIs could able to address the issue of COVID crisis at the grassroots level is going to be the my whole presentation substance. So I'm very sorry that not much I'm going to speak regarding livelihood issues that you mentioned in the beginning. Very briefly, once again, AP state presents a different scenario in addressing the pandemic at the grassroots level, because PRI's term ceased to exist in the year 2018. The previous elections to the PRIs were held in 2013, and the next elections were supposed to be held in 2018. And in fact, AP High Court has given green signal to the then government headed by Mr. Chandrababu Naidu to hold the elections, for the reasons well known to them that they did not hold the elections in 2018 after completing 5 years term. But there was a feeling that Chandrababu Naidu was not, he was not interested in holding the election, because there was already some kind of fear or feeling that TDP, which was headed by Chandrababu Naidu, Telugu Desam Party, might lose in the elections, which will have bearing in the general elections to both Assembly and Lok Sabha that was held at later in 2019. So he doesn't want to give that impression. If TDP loses in local body elections, then general elections, it will be a problematic. So opposition parties also allege that because of this reason, the then Chief Minister did not go ahead holding the elections to constitutional bodies of PRIs, which were due in 2018. Now, the present situation, the present Chief Election Commissioner, who was also State Election Commissioner at that point of time, he was under complete pressure by TDP government not to hold the election, for the simple reason which I explained just now. So he has also obliged them by not holding the election, in spite of the fact that High Court has given green signal. So this was some kind of issue that became a very bone of contention between later YSR Congress Party under Jagan Mohan Reddy, who came to power, and the TDP, who lost the power. So it was also criticized just now, as I said, that the opposition by the opposition party, that CEO of Andhra Pradesh State Election Commission was under pressure from the ruling TDP not to hold election, fearing its defeat. However, in the year 2019, when we had simultaneous elections all over the country, particularly in Andhra, it was simultaneous elections for Parliament and Assembly. You all know that YSR Congress party headed by YS Jaganmohan Reddy, who was son of previous Chief Minister YS Rajashekara Reddy, who was in Congress. And he started, this young person started his own party, defying the All India Congress party. He had differences with UPA people, and then he came out and started YSR Congress party. And he contested in the year 2019. Of course, he contested in 2014 after passing away of his father in helicopter crash. But then in 2014, he could not come to power, although he won, he got almost 46% of vote share, but he could not come to power. That was the time Mr. Chandrababu Naidu could able to come to power with the support of BJP and also a popular cine actor called Pawan Kalyan. That was the history. But in 2019, YSR Congress came to power with more than 50% of vote share. That itself was a record of sorts in AP electoral history. But then what is important is reforms by YSRCP government in the year 2019 was announced. And one of the major reform that he announced as a part of the manifesto was that bringing this village secretariat institution. That's what my presentation is going to be. Village secretariat institution, that what we call it in the local language is Grama Sachivalayam. And he started this particular institute. Maybe the reason is that PRAs were not in place, elections were not held. Someone has to, fulfill this, someone has to bridge this gap of vacuum between local people and then state level apparatus. So it was launched by AP CM, this village secretariat system, what we call it Gram Sachivalayam. On October 2nd, 2019, it was also symbolized that it was on the day of Gandhi Jayanti, Mahatma Gandhi's vision of village republic. So launching of this was coincided in October 2nd because you all know that Mahatma Gandhi was also talking about village republics. Whatever was the spirit of Jaganmohan Reddy, he timed it on October 2nd, giving a signal that he was very, very genuine in terms of village, republics or Gram Swaraj. So this institution of Gram Sachivalayams, what we call it village secretariat, are expected to act as now centers. This is important for effective implementation of welfare and developmental activities of the government, because this is what the function they are expected to do. And as a part of this, they had about village and ward secretary. Village secretaries are for village and ward secretaries for urban areas. So there are two kinds of set of people. One is village secretary and also ward secretary. Institution would act as a bridge between the government and the people by rendering over 500 types of services at their doorstep. Roughly, one secretariat was established for every village with a population of 2,000 people in the state and 4,000 in urban areas. Now, what it amounts to? That it amounts to a total of 11,152 villages and 3,913 wards, that is in urban areas. Secretariats were started. Again, what is very important, these secretaries for village and for wards, they are actually a permanent kind of post. They got through some kind of written examination and then they are a permanent kind of a thing. And this is, apart from that, in this secretariat, a total of 1.26 lakh village and ward secretaries were appointed. That is because each village secretariat was also, got another 10, 12 employees working under various wings of the government, including PR and RD, revenue, medical, health, animal husbandry, power, agriculture, social welfare in rural areas, and municipal services in urban areas. So each village secretariat had got about 10, 12 employees. So this number, if you calculate for entire 11,152 villages and 3,913 wards, the number comes to whopping 2.8 lakh village ward. That is a very big number. Apart from this, the above permanent staff that I was talking, they also put in place 2.8 lakh village ward volunteers. Actually, this village ward volunteers, unlike secretaries, they are actually appointed on outsourcing basis. They are all drawn from the village. So whereas the secretaries who are permanent staff for villages and urban areas, they are drawn from entire Andhra Pradesh through a written examination. So anybody from any part of Andhra Pradesh can write the exam and can get selected. But whereas this 2.8 lakh village ward volunteers, they are actually drawn from the very villages itself. So combination of these two, both secretaries which are a permanent and 2.8 lakh village volunteers who are outsourcing basis, almost to the extent of 4 lakh grassroots level employees were put in place, which was actually, it's also creation of some kind of employment when there was no employment at all in the previous regime. So he thought that it is also kind of employment generation for lakhs of people who are unemployed with 10th class and +2 qualification. Basically, the benefits visualized by the village secretariat system is that it aims to bring corrupt-free, transparent, accountable administration at the village level. It aims to strengthening and smooth functioning of the Panchayat Raj institutions, and it also encourages people's participation in democracy. This is, of course, visualization of what's supposed to be village secretariat system. Then how did you, it is too early to comment on that. This is about 1 year old, this particular system. Of course, there was already some good feedback was coming on this particular system. People from Karnataka and even I'm told that we have read in paper, I don't know, Jose has to qualify this statement, that even Kerala government showed interest how this village volunteers and village secretariat system was working. I do not know what is the veracity of this particular fact. And then, of course, these are very fundamental things, like their village volunteer is being paid 7,500 rupees, is a small sum, but he is responsible for 50 households in a village. For 50 households, there is a one village volunteer in a village, and his duty is to see that all the requirements, whether it says social sector benefits or other housing benefits, all these things have to be enumerated by this village secretariat, and then he has to do it on a computer on a digitized fashion, and then he will send it to the higher ups so that a continuous kind of interaction will be there. So it's interesting that, but now the point that I'm coming, which is important for this particular presentation, is that how did this village volunteers network and COVID crisis had actually happened? This was, it was not expected, because when the system started, there was no COVID. But then when COVID came, state government thought this network of village volunteers comes very handy because they are there in good number. So what they have done it, that immediately they put these people in addressing the issue of pandemic. How did they actually address this issue? According to Hindustan Times, which says that around 2.5 lakh village volunteers, that is village volunteers in rural areas, ward volunteers in the urban areas, have so far screened 1.39 lakh families out of the total registered number of 1,44,000 families in the state for coronavirus. This is Hindustan Times, but of course, this was a figure in 2020. Now this figure has become manifold later, but every stage village volunteers were involved in screening all these people who are coming either from abroad or who are coming, migrants who are coming back to the villages. Each volunteer has been entrusted with the responsibility of monitoring the health status 50 families by conducting door-to-door survey. So they have been trained in this by health department, and each volunteer was supposed to do it. So the survey helped the government to identify and track 10,000 people who had returned from various foreign countries after February 10th. The volunteers network was also helpful in tracking around 1,100 people who had attended Tablighi Jamaat conference at Nizamuddin, because That was also become bone of contention in Andhra Pradesh, because number of people had attended that particular Jamaat conference in Delhi, and because of that they also brought in a lot of corona cases. So these volunteers also helped the 1,100 people who attended that conference in Delhi in identifying them, and then once again doing the testing. Taking the inputs from the police and also medical and health department, volunteers having the database of the people in their respective jurisdiction could quickly track the Delhi returnees and help the authorities quarantine such people. So this is a very interesting, which they never expected, state government making use of these village volunteers in this COVID crisis. And it came very handy because they have lakhs of people at the grassroots level. As I said, that these entries are directly monitored by the district health authorities and primary health centers, that village volunteers, the kind of records that they are having in the mobile application, that's being directly monitored. So it becomes very easy for health department and primary health center care centers, that the number of cases who are actually, being affected by coronavirus, and this institution of village volunteers, played a very crucial role in identifying this. In urban areas, of course, each ward is being monitored by two teams. The primary team comprising ward volunteers and ASHA workers, A&M workers monitors the health status in every household. So, the great important role that ASHA workers and A&M workers have played in other parts of the country. But in Andhra, in urban areas, these ASHA workers, A&M workers, in tandem with urban volunteers, they also participated very effectively in this. And what is important is that 5 rounds of house-to-house surveys were conducted across the entire state. This is 5 rounds with the help of the ward and village volunteers to assess COVID prevalence and identify susceptible persons of old age with comorbid conclusions. And very recently, this is just on 2nd October 2020, it has been reported in Deccan Herald that during a virtual conference on the pandemic with the chief ministers last month, Narendra Modi reportedly appreciated the village ward secretariat and volunteer system and felt that the other state could emulate this model. It's not because of Narendra Modi has appreciated the institution has become important, but it is also a number of other state governments from Karnataka and other state governments also showed interest how this particular system is working. Now, there are also, other initiatives by the state government.
Professor, can you conclude? It's hardly 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I think that is enough for me. I have come almost to the end. So some other initiatives of the state government in addressing the pandemic, along with the efforts by village and ward volunteers, what state governments at a higher level, apex level, did is tracing, that is by village volunteers, testing and treating is being followed systemically. That is the reason at one point of time, the cases were as big as 10,000 on a particular day in Andhra Pradesh for a very long time. So if you see, now AP has about 9 lakh cases were found positive till date with nearly 7,000 deaths. If you compare with Karnataka, if you compare with Tamil Nadu, the deaths are relatively lesser when compared to, but number of cases are more in Andhra, but the number of deaths, ultimately, that is also very important parameter, that was less. If Tamil Nadu, it goes up to 12,000, Karnataka, it goes nearly up to 12,000. Of course, Telangana, Kerala, they are very less. Even total number of cases are also less. The highest number of tests across India were conducted in AP. I think this also goes to the credit of AP government, that nearly 1 crore, that is 10 million tests were done, which is highest in the country. The test per million ratio was also 1.91 lakh. I think this kind of overall holistic approach of state government doing number of tests and then village volunteers at the grassroots level working in tandem, it helped Andhra. Today, Andhra is reporting for last 20 days, not more than 500 cases, and deaths have come less than just below 10. So COVID patients, one more important thing is COVID patients treatment was brought under government Arogyasri program, what is Arogyasri, which is very popular in this state, is patients being treated in private hospitals, including corporate hospitals, and these costs are being reimbursed by the state government. So this was also helped people who are poor people, but whose treatment was very costly and they could not pay from their pocket. They came under Arogyasri program and they are being treated in private hospitals, and that treatment costs were borne by the state. So post-COVID patients are also being given some monetary help until they become very fit to come back to their work model. So as a result of all these systematic efforts, AP model is being lauded across the nation. Now, conclusions. Village secretary system, as I said, played a very dynamic role in addressing the pandemic. System also helped outreach functions in delivering development and social benefits into whether it's a pension, other developmental functions, village volunteers. Now their role has been identified, has been accepted by everyone that they're doing good work. Now the point for this seminar is that system of village volunteers has emerged as an alternative to PRIs is to be probed. My interest is also in the days to come whether this system as an alternative PRIs has emerged. And I feel, I mean, it's not a good thing because this system has come through an executive order, whereas PRIs are a legal institutions. But then people are happy with village volunteers. Now, next few months, we are going to have local bodies elections. So it is visualized by the state government that once PRIs come into being after the election, the village volunteer system needs to play a complementary role in strengthening PRIs. So we should not be losing out the benefits that village volunteers has brought in the pandemic or in any other state outreach functions, but they need to play a complementary role to strengthening PRIs, but not bypassing the PRIs. But we have to wait and see how this present government, once elections are held after a few months, they are going to see this particular role for PRIs and village volunteers in a complementary mode. Thank you very much, madam. I'm sorry if I exceeded my time.
That's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I hope the village volunteers will play a complementary role.
Yeah.
Now, could I request Professor Adi to present her paper?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, sure. I'm going to share my presentation. The professor has to close his presentation so I can upload my, okay, thank you.
Yes, we can see it. Go ahead, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, Kerala, and good evening, Mexico City, wherever you are. Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the Center for Ghanaian Studies and the Center for Rural Management, especially Professors Chatukulama and Molakatu for organizing this global event. Sorry about my poor pronunciation of your surnames. And well, I'm going to talk. I'm the only Spanish-speaking person in this seminar, so I think that I got a big responsibility because I have to offer you a general view of what's going on with Latin American local governments during this health crisis. Well, I would like just to point out to start some basic conceptual framework. And it's important to remember that decentralization is a polysemic concept. It can mean many things, from the devolution of fiscal powers and political authority to the transfer of central administrative units to different regions within a country. So we need to keep in mind that decentralization has different dimensions and has different forms. And the mixture of these dimensions and forms are going to shape the outcomes of a decentralization process. Now, regarding Latin American We need to say that we are a highly urbanized region of the world, the most urbanized region in the developing world. In Latin America, we have a population of nearly 550 million people. Half of them live in large urban metropolitan areas, such as Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, Santiago. And as average, 80% of our population live in urban areas. So on the other hand, we have only 20% of our population living in rural or semi-urban areas. And they are highly fragmented, both metropolitan and rural areas. In Mexico, for instance, we have more than 5,000 small towns. I guess this is a very small number compared to India, but in Mexico is quite a lot. Decentralization is not in the history of our countries in Latin America. Countries like Mexico and Peru used to be highly centralized since pre-Columbian times. Before the arrival of Spaniards, we have kingdoms that were used to be very centralized. And other countries like Brazil, Chile, and Argentina became very centralized because of the military dictatorships that they have during the second half of the last century. So anyways, the decentralization process started in the region at the beginning of the 80s, and 20 years later, all the countries have experienced some dimension or form of decentralization. The political decentralization, the political arena, basically has meant democratization. At the beginning of the 80s, only 6 countries of the region elected their local authorities democratically. Nowadays, all the countries elect their local authorities by vote, with the exception of Cuba, which is, as you know, a dictatorship. The democratization process haven't fully reached the regional level, because in many countries still the regional, they have regional representatives of central governments. They don't elect their regional, they don't have regional authorities. Chile's, the country Chile is progressing in that respect, because next year they are going to elect for the first time in its history, their governors. But at the local level, most authorities are democratically elected. In the legal arena, national constitutions recognize the political autonomy of local governments. And these constitutions state the responsibilities that correspond to local authorities. Most of them, they are responsible for the provision of basic public services, but they also have to carry out some other responsibilities as territorial and urban planning, economic and social development, and of course social citizen participation. But actually, in many cases, local governments do not carry out those responsibilities because they lack institutional capacities for doing so. In the intergovernmental coordination area, as I mentioned, there is a high level of fragmentation among local governments in Latin America. So national governments have created a coordination mechanism, but those mechanisms are highly centralized and don't work very well. Basically, most of the time, local governments are subordinated to the decisions made by national or regional authorities. Brazil is a remarkable exception because the federal constitution grants a high level of autonomy to local governments. They are recognized as part of the federation, and this provides them with a high level of influence in the policy making at national level. In the fiscal arena, the outcomes are also are diverse, are different, but in general terms, we can say that the most advanced part of the fiscal decentralization has been in the expenditure side. So this means that whereas expenditure decentralization has been growing since the 80s, revenue decentralization has been limited. This means basically that local governments rely on national fiscal transfers, and the degree of dependence is different. It's actually quite different. We have that Brazil and Peru, their local governments, they obtain around 70% of the total income from federal transfers or from national transfers, whereas in Costa Rica, in Central America, local governments got around 20% of their income from those national transfers. As you see, there is a big difference between the capacity for tax collection and the spending capacity of local government. So this situation has created vertical imbalances. And also there are wide differences among the governments of the same level. I mean, local governments are very, very heterogeneous in terms of their capacity for revenue collection and in terms of their capacity for fiscal management. This has created horizontal imbalances, and they reflect on a very unequal provision of public services. The high dependence on national transfers make local governments very weak in terms of fiscal autonomy, and it reduces also its level of accountability and encourages a very low quality in terms of expenditure. Now, regarding the institutional capacities of local governments, a couple of years ago, a group of scholars, Latin American scholars, organized a research for measuring the institutional capacities of local governments within the Latin American region. And we, including myself, so we invited scholars from 23 countries, and all of them accepted, but at the end, only 10 countries had some data to be able to say something about the institutional capacities of their local governments. The countries where there is more data, more data is available, are Brazil and Mexico. There is, although with the very few data that we got, we found that there is a trend for increasing the education level of the public officials at the local level. Although the largest share of them is still in the lowest level of education. Most local governments do not have some basic administrative areas for planning, for evaluation, for citizen participation, or risk management, for instance. And I think that's something that is common among developing countries. There is a wide difference between the local governments of urban and rural areas. So summarizing the outcomes of the decentralization process in Latin America for local governments, there has been political decentralization, but it hasn't been matched with fiscal autonomy and building capacity. The local government's responsibilities have increased, but without capacity building. Although legally they have political autonomy, this is limited because they don't have a high degree of fiscal autonomy. The coordination mechanisms are very centralized. Fiscal autonomy is low, and the revenue power of local governments is very low, and institutional capacities in general terms are very limited. Most of the time, the rich and metropolitan local governments are those who have more capacities, more fiscal resources. So this creates a very serious imbalance among the capacity of provision for public services, for instance. Now, talking about the health crisis, before the coronavirus pandemic arrived to Latin America, the region was already facing social, economical, and political crises. The region is one of the most unequal within the world. We are really, there is a big inequality among the social groups. And in the last 5 years, the extreme poverty has been growing. From 2014 to 2020, the region has been expecting its lowest economic growth of the last 40 years. Nearly 2/3 of the population are employed in the informal economy, which means that they don't have social security or health coverage. So imagine the effect of this when the pandemic struck. So many of our cities are known for high levels of violence. And then because of these problems, it's not strange to find that a very low percentage of citizens are satisfied with democracy, and a very low percentage also trust their government. So there is a very very serious legitimacy crisis of political institutions in Latin America. When the COVID-19 crisis arrived, well, we became, by around May of this year, we became the ground zero for the center of the pandemic at world level. The lockdown measures that most governments took reduce the income of households, and also reduce the income consumption. Remember that most of the people that works, they are in the informal sector. And now the region is... Conclude? Yeah, sure. And then, so the region is expecting a very a contraction of around up to 10% in some countries of their GDP. The responses to the COVID-19 crisis have focused on in 6 areas: health, social, economic, governance, and basic public services, and fiscal also. The kind of response that each type of local government has developed has been shaped to a great extent from the outcomes of the decentralization process. So the rural local governments have adopted only restrictive measures such as mobility restrictions, enforcement of mask wearing rules, lockdown of economic non-essential activities. But the local governments that are richer and with more capacities, those from metropolitan areas, have been able to create much more sophisticated policies. And most of the time, local governments have had more success than regional and even national governments. So what are the challenges of Latin American local governments? I consider that those challenges must be approached based on four components. The first is the change, a transformation of the fiscal arrangements. Local governments, Latin American local governments need more fiscal autonomy and need to be more accountable and responsible with their citizenship. And for that, they need to exploit their own revenue sources. In terms of coordination, they need to be treated as political peers of national and regional governments. So this is the only way that they are going to be fully responsible before their citizen. And for improving their fiscal management and for being able to make better decisions, they need to have better institutional capacities. And the capacity building is something that local governments cannot do only by themselves. They need the support of national and regional governments. So this is a multi-level challenge. And last but not least, the fourth component is co-responsibility. And I'm talking about governance issues, about the relationship that local governments have with their population. In Latin America, we have a very passive political culture. So that needs to change. And people need to become responsible also, along with the local governments, for the response and the work that has to be done after the health crisis is over. Well, thanks very much, and that's it.
Thank you, Professor Adi. It was a good presentation. Hope position improves. Now, can I invite Professor Prakash Jha to present his paper? Professor Prakash Jha?
Yeah. Respected chairperson, distinguished co-panelists, and participants, I'm really honored to be invited by Professor John and Jos to present my paper in the webinar, which is organized in Kerala. With the permission of chairperson, now I'll start my presentation. The topic of the title of my paper is Role of Local Government in a Post-COVID-19 Brazil. And my co-panelist, Madam Adi Carrera Hernandez, have already explained about Latin America. She has also made passing reference to Brazil. So it is quite interesting to listen to her presentations. So now I'll further add to what she talked about the Brazil. Now, if you look at the Brazil, as she rightly argued that Latin America was epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Brazil was in fact epicenter of the epicenter. Even within Latin America, Brazil was considered as epicenter. So you see, what happened as a result of conflict between states, federal government, and local government, and lack of coordination, that also led to increase in number of cases and the problem in management of COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm going to talk about these issues and also judicial response to the conflict between federal government on the one hand and center in the states, states and local government on the other hand, and judicial check against the centralization. Judiciary has come up with landmark verdict which try to restore the principles of federalism in Brazil, which has led to the empowerment of local government in particular and states in general. So you see, I'm going to, against this background, I'm going to examine the role of Brazilian local government in Brazilian federalism post COVID-19. Now, let me begin with the constitutional provision because that is very, very important, and I am referring to the latest constitutions because Brazil has had number of constitutions, and 1988 constitution is the latest one, and this constitution has brought about a paradigm shift as far as the local government is concerned, and there was so much decentralizations that many observers and policymakers, academicians have called it localization of Brazilian federations or municipalization of Brazilian federation. Under the Constitution of 1988, local government were given a number of powers and functions, both fiscal, political, legislative, executive. And some of the powers I'll explain, those were local in nature. So local government is quite autonomous in as far as those functions are concerned. For example, public transport, preschool, elementary educations, primary health care, preservation of historical and cultural heritage. But what is important here is that in Brazil, as elsewhere in Latin America, you can see there is lots of overlapping when it comes to the spending responsibilities are concerned. And when there is overlapping between the function of federal government, state government, and local government, you require lots of coordination, cooperation, even collaboration between three orders of government. So this is a constitutional requirement in Brazil. If there is no cooperation, then there will be a problem. And this is what exactly happened in case of containment of COVID-19 pandemic, where there was a lack of coordination. Federal government taking a different stand, whereas state and local government was interested in taking measures, initiatives to contain the pandemic. Now, I'll come to these issues later. Let's focus on then revenue raising powers. So Brazilian local government is also distinct as far as its role is concerned compared to other Latin American countries, as well as many classical federal system also. Local government has been assigned, separate revenue raising powers, which makes it distinct from the local government in other countries. Though local government is also heterogeneous, as Professor Addy has argued that rural local governments are much more dependent on federal transfer as well as state transfers, but there are also rich municipal government. So this is all about the heterogeneity of Brazilian local government. When it comes to the taxation power, there are many important taxation power, like service tax, that is also called value-added tax, which is given to the local government, urban property tax, property transfer tax. These taxes are given to the local government. Then when it comes to the intergovernmental transfers, the granting aid which is given to the local government, that comes both from the center as well as the states, and most of them are constitutional. Even the formula to determine the quantum of transfer is detailed in the constitution. So most of the transfers are automatic, hassle-free, and this is something which is very, very important. Now I'll come to some specific transfer. which is called transfer for primary educations. Most importantly, I mean, from the perspective of what is happening in the healthcare, there is a unified health system in Brazil, or universal healthcare system. Now, this is very, very important in the present context. Now, in Brazil, you see, 1988 Constitution has made the health as fundamental rights. So this is very, very important, and there is universal coverage when it comes to healthcare in Brazil. 78% of the population is assisted by public universal healthcare system, and then only 22% is covered by the private health insurance companies. Even in case of private health insurance companies, the expenditure incurred by the individual is reimbursed by the government. So this is something which is quite distinct in case of Brazil. Now, see, if you look at the health sphere, then 1988 Constitution had heralded an era of cooperative federalism. Without the cooperation of three orders of government, there cannot be the delivery of health services. And see, you see the post-1988 Constitution, there have been cooperation between the three orders of the government. But there is a problem when Bolsonaro became the president of Brazil. So there was the conflict between three orders of the government, in which state and local government were on one side and federal government was on other. So you see the president of Brazil taking recourse to some measures which can be considered as coercive, and therefore Brazilian federalism is known nowadays also as coercive federalism. But what is important here is that subnational government, both local and state government, are able to challenge the authority of the federal government, which is very, very important for the future of federalism in Brazil, and also judicial response, which has been very, very positive, supportive of local and state government. So now let's see this kind of conflict that developed in Brazil. See what federal government did. It started diverting health equipment when the coronavirus outbreak happened. The federal government started diverting equipment like ventilators to national stockpile without having any plan to contain the pandemic. Now, state and local government were left with no option but to approach the Chinese companies to get those equipments. Several states, Maranhão, Sao Paulo, Federal District, Rio, and then Amazon Consortium, which has a representative from the 9 Amazon states, they also approached Chinese against the will of the federal government, who was against China. Now, if you see some of the scholars of Lucio et al. Have pointed out the existence of two models of federalism in the current Brazil, and he talks about one is cooperative federalism, which which began since 1988, and then the second one, which occurred when Bolsonaro became the president of Brazil. So that is called Bolsonaro federalism. One is cooperative federalism, and second one is Bolsonaro federalism. So conflict between the Bolsonaro government and the state and local government led to the problem as far as coordination of policy is concerned, and which was mostly needed to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, what happened? Most of the policies, such as restrictions on commerce, interstate and intermunicipal public transport, schools, and so on, have been brought about by the state and local government. So it was the state and local government which was responsible for bringing about some measures, though there was delay even on the part of the state and local government, as there was no national plan in Brazil. But whatever measures were taken to contain the pandemic, it was done by the local and state initiative. And effort on the part of the president was to concentrate power in the federal government. This is evident from some of the initiatives measure that president took. That is very, very important here. President issued, ordinance, or in Brazil, they are called provisional act or provisional measures to enlarge his power during the crisis. This provisional act intended to prevent states and local government from imposing, lockdown in their states and locality, and also taking measures to, implement social distancing. Now, under the act, subnational government will have to act in accordance with the directives of the federal government.
Excuse me, doctor, you have 2 minutes to conclude.
All right. So you see what happened as a result of these initiatives. Judiciary came to the rescue of, the states and local government. And you see, judiciary, when Bolsonaro government started a public campaign, which was Brazil cannot stop. Judiciary suspended it on the ground that propaganda could not. This propaganda could harm the health of Brazilian. It is important decisions. Therefore, it was important decision to uphold the rule of law. A court rejected also the provisional act, which was issued by the president to prevent state and local government to impose the lockdown. There was also attempt to hide the informations about the total number of infectious cases in Brazil. Supreme Court said government cannot make public propaganda against quarantine. President cannot interfere with the states and municipal level. And you see, judgment was quite landmark that restored the authority of the local and state government to take some measures as they are autonomous, because health was concurrent subject which has been assigned to all 3 levels of government. So if they cannot cooperate, at least the state and local government can take some initiative. That was the judgment given by the Supreme Court. Now, not only there was friction between central states, also within the executive also there was problems, because within 6 weeks of beginning of pandemic, 2 health ministers resigned in Brazil because they had differences with the president, and therefore they had to resign. So you see, the state and local government responded by convincing people that lockdown, social distancing are essential. But there was also campaign on the part of federal government to tell people that economic activities are essential for the well-being of the countries. So if there was a survey which was undertaken, according to this survey, 76% of the people approved lockdown by state and local government, and this shows that the local and state have the support, and federal government was, unpopular. You can. So there is also, one governor. Sao Paulo is largest state province in Brazil, and governor of Sao Paulo, called Bolsonaro another virus. That is, he called Bolsonaro virus. So this is how conflict between central and state surfaced in Brazil. Now let me conclude. Now, after having discussed, the relationship between federal government and state and local government, what we can say is that, see, before Bolsonaro became the president and after 1988 constitution, there have been cooperation and there is interdependency of state and local government on center because of the financial interdependency. But there was cooperation, there was cooperative federalism, there was also inter-state consortium, inter-municipal consortium, that is a forum of intergovernmental institutions, horizontal level. And there have been number of national programs which have bottom-up design. This shows willingness of federal government before Bolsonaro became the president to take into consideration the local government and states in formulating the policy. So bottom-up design in national policy. Now, COVID-19, post-COVID-19, we have seen the lack of cooperation and coordination, which resulted into the number of problems, including number of cases and all that has taken place in Brazil. So I think I have finished. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope the decentralization is effective in Brazil, at least after this epidemic rises. Now, can I invite Professor Uma Maheshwari to talk on epidemics planning and cities?
Okay, 1 second. ക്ലിക്ക് ചെയ്തപ്പോഴാണ് ഇതൊന്ന് ഇങ്ങനെ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്.
Professor Uma?
അല്ല മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്തു ഇതല്ലേ?
I think he is setting up the PPT.
Oh. She was not seen in the group, so I was wondering.
She was there. I don't know whether. Yeah, she's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning,
Yes.
Professor.
Good morning.
At the outset,
Are you ready? No.
Yeah, I'm ready, ma'am.
Okay.
At the outset, I would like to thank the organizer and members who have worked for the webinar. I'm today presenting the topic on epidemics, planning and cities, strengthening health infrastructure, and ensuring effective disease surveillance. If the PowerPoints are not ready to support me, I could just start with go ahead with just giving an introduction. So since the topic is on epidemics, planning and cities, a small introduction about Chennai city. As you know, Chennai city is one of the most urbanized cities in the world. It is 31st. It has some historical features about it, that it has been right from the 17th century a center of a lot of commercial and military activities, making it more population-wise more denser. That today currently we have, in according to 2011 census, we have a population of around 8.9 million people. And the city as such has an area of 426 square kilometer. And the sprawl areas, there has been an haphazard growth of the city because of migration. So just giving a brief description about the city, going ahead with what's been done in the health area or health scenario. So we do have the departments, the organizations like the Public Health Department and the Greater Chennai Corporation, which is looking into the health of its people in the city. So I have looked into the 18 activities that is being taken care by the Public Health Department and also the areas, the work done by the Chennai Corporation. So looking into the data, it gives about the magnitude in which these health organizations have been facing the challenges during this pandemic times. And looking into the corona pandemic profile, which I have exhibited in my PPT, which I'm not able to get support of currently. Let's tell about the activities that are being adopted in Chennai as in other places in the world about contact tracing, because this pandemic has really thrown upon the responsibilities on the institutions to cover up a lot of activities. It involves a lot of activities, right from collection centers to counseling and all that. And there has been an effective use of technology also in disease surveillance and technological components. Can I go ahead, ma'am? Hello?
Dr. Jose, please mute your mic.
Sorry.
Can I go ahead, sir? Yes. Okay, so in that context, it's quite interesting to say that Greater Chennai Corporation is the first municipal body and Chennai is the first city in India to have initiated the door-to-door fever and COVID-19 symptom monitoring process. So this is the claim of the corporation, that they have provided interesting facts about their initiatives taken during the pandemic. So since my topic is about the planning and how it intends to face the future, we have to look into what happened before the pandemic, during and after. So looking into three sections, what are the challenges that the current the current epidemic has posed? We need to also understand the difference between the epidemic, endemic, and the pandemic. So whether the corporation or the health institution is able to maneuver or deal with this kind of epidemics that has already existed in Chennai city, like we have TB, we had cholera, measles. So we had a lot of such prevalence and incidents and prevalence, and they have been coping up. But when you look into the statistics, there has been always the darker side of it about the inadequacy of health infrastructure and health personnel. Because in Chennai city, we do have the private holders who capture who target the people. And another interesting feature of Chennai city is that we look into the demographic profile. We say that Chennai has got 60% of population living in, so rather 30% of its population living in slums and 60% living in normal residential areas. So we know there is a greater inequality existing between the population. And here again, we find that this is the 30% who go to the government and the 60 are the one who go to the private. So this kind of imbalances have been there before the corona times. And during corona, another interesting phenomena that all of us would have observed is that most of us prefer to go to government rather than go to a private, because the healthcare given by the private was indeed costly. So the health cost or health, okay, you can go straight to the slide number 40, 41, 40. So that has been another factor in the minds of the people. the vulnerable people who had safely entered into the government side, I mean the government health sector, whereas the other 60% had the dilemma of either going to the private or to the government. So what are the challenges that has been finally that has been evident after this prevalence of this epidemic since March, and which is continuing to have its own silent equation, is about whether the corporation has been able to have a uniformity in its provisions, and whether the health intervention has been um, what is being tackled properly by the institutions at the local level. So you find there are variations, regional variations, where you find one region has very minimal prevalence and another region showing a higher prevalence. So yes, please show from 40 challenges. Okay, so that the data given by the Chennai Corporation does show these variations, and the variations also depict the fact that the hotspots that has been emerging. There are new hotspots. The older hotspots have a better cases now, active cases, and there are new hotspots of active cases. So the Chennai Corporation is still wondering as to what kind of other interventions are required because of the socio-economic profile that is different and varying, as we have a different proposition of poor and rich in the city. And this is because another interesting feature is that Chennai is also bordering with another cities bordering with three neighboring districts. So the frequent movement between their districts into the city has also led to the rise of the COVID cases, which also creates a problem for the health department or the health institutions and the local governance in general as to who is going to be responsible for the people who are going to be affected. Where do we really curb, or where do we really monitor or intervene or stop? So these are certain issues that goes at the organizational levels and also for health workers who work in these institutions. So I have brought in some of the reality check that is required while going into the various data and talking to various health professionals, and also looking into the data given by the many research organizations. The most important and stark reality of the whole process of coronavirus and its prevalence, the surveillance, we find there's a need for vital data sharing, because when you look into the very many institutions that have been taking care of this disease prior to COVID and during COVID, there seemed to be a problem in vital data sharing. So data has been always an issue. So to really make it more effective, we can take the words of virologist, um, yeah, Mr. Jacob John, virologist from Chennai Christian Medical College, who has said that we have long neglected data in our health management system. For instance, we have never counted tuberculosis or diphtheria properly. The exception was polio, as we have a goal of zero, he said, adding that COVID has once again addressed the importance of the data. So the data management seems to be one of the important area that needs to be given importance. Planning. We need to really plan about who is to really do this data accumulation of data or collection of data and interpretation of data. And then gaps in the data. And most of the papers also are given this reporting on how corporation had given the data, and there was a data given by the Directorate of Public Health, and there was a huge hue and cry about whose data is real. So that's another issue that gives a misnomer, it gives a different picture about the reality of the disease and the health intervention by the institutions. Another is the technological use and surveillance. So we know the coronavirus has necessitated the need of most of the technology, like we have the telemedicine, counseling, video counseling. So this is also given importance to technological use, and we need to understand if these health infrastructures are having the proper technology management. Do we really have personnel who could manage this? And there is also need to strengthen the intersectoral coordination between state and other actors. So this is the slide number 47, 48. So you know that there are very many departments. For instance, we have this health sector workers, and there they need to be given training by assistant engineers, district health, divisional health officers, sanitary inspectors. So again, there is an issue as to where do we really collect this people and what kind of training to be given and who has to really dictate the terms and guidelines for this training. So there are certain issues in providing this training. So that was another reality check about creating a and strengthening intersectoral coordination. And most obvious that was found and it again was highlighted in the paper was that there are too many departments which looked into the corona care. And there was also a comment by the leading political parties that during this time, the whole healthcare and whole health provision should come under either the chief minister or under one umbrella or under one executive and administrative head. That will propel them or compel them to provide clear data and their prognosis and managing the health issues. So looking into all these facets, we also have another issue that we also have the Disaster Management Act and the Epidemics Disease Act. One looks into it, we know that both of them have an issue about how these acts meddle with the coordination between the center, state, and the local governments. Because the Epidemics Disease Act, Act in 1897, takes necessary actions to prevent the outbreak or spread of dangerous epidemic disease. And interesting, the municipalities are also empowered by other state laws to take similar measures. So when you really go into the field, you find that these many acts and the provisions and the personnel who work under the Disaster Management Act do have issue with dealing with and working along with the state government and the local governments. So we have to really look into the legal framework and rightly the second administrative reform commission has clearly stated that there are certain entries in the state list and concurrent list that are overlapping, and this creates room for allegations about the center overstepping its powers. And you know the center today, since it is the center where you find money is being given to the state and the local governments, most times they overlap, they oversee the and give more importance to the center rather than state and local stakeholders. So to avoid encroaching about the state's powers, the Commission has recommended addition of new entry in the concurrent list for management of disasters and emergency, natural or man-made. This is also recommended by the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution and later by Ministry of Home Affairs, but this is never taken up. Okay, so these are certain basic problems, issues with our legal framework and the guidelines that have been provided by the state and the central government. So what is the way forward? In a country governed by the rule of law, it is essential that all power be exercised in a matter that is constitutionally grounded. So the Disaster Management Act should not be seen as a carte blanche for the center to micromanage the COVID-19 crisis. In fact, one of the major advantages of having a multi-level federal system is the presence of governance structures at the most local levels which are best placed to deal with emergent crises. And that was evident in the present crisis. So naturally, the COVID has really reiterated the need to bring about better management strategies henceforth. Naturally, there are limitations to what local government can do, and the concurrent risk entry on preventing the interstate spread of disease is precisely the kind of function that is best allocated to the center. In light of this, the center should restrict its actions under the Disaster Management Act to ensure coordination between states rather than dictating consistency across states. And for responsive and efficient governance that is tailored to meet local exigencies, state and third tier governments should be taking the lead in tackling public health crisis with ample support from the center. So going forward, the legal response to COVID-19 needs to be reoriented with this mind. So that is the whole the outcome or the whole crux of what needs to be really what is unearthed from the studies that there need to be a way forward and there need to be a better coordination and talking about consistency. We need to talk about coordination, and also looking. I have based my ideas and thoughts on the kind of surveys that has been taken by the Chennai Corporation, where they are told that 1/5 of the Chennai population has been affected by this, and they also talked about how there have been problems in analyzing it and finding out the proportion, the range of the age group which has been affected by this disease. So when it is for this particular disease, you can imagine how in the future, if we are going to have more pandemics or more epidemics, there needs to be more clearance about what kind of methodology, what kind of testing performance or testing strategies we need to have a clear-cut data about the health incidents. So, so we need to have a policy framework in place, and that is the whole crux of really linking epidemics planning and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Professor Uma. Now, can I call upon the professor from Japan, Professor Sato?
Yeah, thank you very much. So can I share my screen?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me and can everybody see this? Yeah.
Yes, it's visible.
It's okay? Okay. Thank you very much, Madam. How much time do I have?
15 minutes. So if you can have 2 minutes for background, 8 minutes or 9 minutes for the text presentation, and another 2-3 minutes to conclude, that would be nice.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, let me begin. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting occasion. Some time ago, actually 10 years ago, I edited this book, and I was having a very valuable contribution by our Kerala colleague on the experience of India. And I'm glad that many of you have remembered this book, and so I was asked to make this talk today. Right. My talk today is a very broad subject, comparing pre-COVID-19 world and now. And then I'm basically arguing that we need a paradigm shift in thinking about our own prosperity and well-being. Now, briefly, the world before COVID-19, the planet was in unsustainable conditions. We are having a series of problems, excessive consumption, social divisions, and climate change, etc. But these problems are not separate problems. Those are interrelated problems, and these problems were arising from one deep rooted system. What that in many observers' view was the capitalism. So the formula that we used to believe, the economic growth and economic prosperity, but that, well, obviously that brought some sort of prosperity to the large segment of population in the world, but it was causing other sorts of problems as well. Well, one of the deep rooted issue here in our discussion is our obsession with economic growth. It was considered necessary ever since the Industrial Revolution that economic growth is imperative. It was needed both for political leaders and for economic elites as well, for different reasons. But then, as of now, COVID-19 is hitting us all over the world. Now, this is one of the zoonoses. This is one of the viruses which affect both humans and other species as well. And And this sort of pandemic would happen, and that prediction was made much earlier by many of us who were concerned in our type of development. As we know, when forests and other natural habitat for other species and the land for us were separated, then zoonoses were not our problem. They were not posing us a problem. But once we continue to keep our faith in economic growth, and by converting forests and other natural habitat into agricultural land and factory land, etc., then this zoonosis is coming to be an enormous human threat. So therefore, the root causes of this is in excessive developmentalism. So, and therefore, to put it in a slightly different way, the capitalism and our paranoia with economic growth, that should be reconsidered as we are suffering from this COVID-19. Right, so many of us have come to think that if there is not a fundamental shift in our socio-economic system, then even if the COVID-19 is defeated, another wave of pandemic will come in the near future. Right, well, I cannot explain too much in detail, but in many observers' view, there are three fundamental problems with capitalism. Number one, in modern economic analysis, it's quite often the case that nature is free to use. Number two, and reproducing ourselves, taking care of families, taking care of people themselves, those are often considered free. And number three, quite often it is assumed that markets work autonomously, but it actually the market can function with proper guidelines and support from public authorities. So autonomous markets is actually a myth. Right, so as we are suffering from the pandemic of COVID-19, this is a very good opportunity to think about what sort of future we need. So I argue that a paradigm shift is needed. We probably have to shift from prosperity with continuous economic growth to prosperity without growth. My main argument is that well, what I'm saying is that we should still seek prosperity, but prosperity without continuous economic activities expansion. Right, so without mass production, without mass consumption, without mass disposal. Well, some of those lines of ideas are expressed in, for example, in the school of post-development thinking. And in Europe, this school of thought is often called the school of degrowth. And both those schools emphasize that what we need is, quote, decolonization of the imaginary. What it means is that we are so used to think that economic growth is a good thing. For economic prosperity, continuous growth is necessary. So our mind is fully occupied with that idea. But is that really the case? Now, some of the radical people think that it's not necessarily so. So they call it, they call this, we have to decolonize our own way of thinking. Right. So if we criticize capitalism, we are not necessarily go into other political ideologies such as socialism or communism, but we are arguing for different sorts of prosperity. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this experience in my own country, Japan. Well, many of the audience here today are in India, so I'm not very sure how you are familiar with this, but this is a very general and short description. Right. Rapid modernization and economic growth took place in Japan in the 20th century, and this was brought by centralized techno-administrative system. It was not brought by a decentralized system. So it brought rapid change, but it brought most of the prosperity to the Tokyo metropolitan area. And then some of you may be surprised to hear this, but some of the remote rural areas became, quote, domestic colonies in essential sense. So rural areas were serving the Tokyo metropolitan area for their prosperity. But this is changing. Many of us started to think that this is very unfair. Now, with our population started to decrease rather than increase, and then as our society moved into post-industrial society, our rural areas, the rural areas in Japan, are now facing enormous social and economic problems. So some people actually started to fled away from big cities even before the COVID-19. Some of the people started to think that the unfair relationship between the big cities and the rural areas, that was coming to be too much. Then the COVID-19 is hitting us in Japan and you in India, in other countries as well. Sorry, this diagram is in the Japanese language, but what I'm trying to show is that comparing different localities within Japan, Tokyo is massively losing people. There are significant outflow out of Tokyo. The other big cities are losing people as well. But then once it was called rural areas, these areas started to attract people. Well, this is again one newspaper article showing that young families with small children, they started to prefer to live in rural areas now because Tokyo and other big cities, they become the symbol of crowdedness, and that crowd is bad for the COVID-19. So if one is very serious to seek a new way of prosperity, the solution is don't keep living in big cities such as Tokyo. So there are slow but probably gradual and steady paradigm shift is going on. Now, I tend to think that this is taking place in three different spheres: politics, economy, and civil society. But I don't think I have time to explain this in detail. So let me just move on. The importance of local governments in promoting this paradigm shift. Well, as we saw, the relationship between urban and rural areas are changing. And the role of localities are now becoming more important than before. Therefore, the role of local governments are coming to be more important than before. But emphasizing one locality never means isolation. Different localities can form networks of change. Even if they are not next to each other, different localities having similar ideas and orientation, they can collaborate and form networks, and together they can cause change. So that's what some people call it open relocalization. And this sort of network can be connected across countries and across continents as well. Now, in this sort of network, many people started to think that holistic vision is really necessary. And if those visions are followed by practical policies, and then local governments can be an engine for meaningful change. Right. So we are in a critical pathway. And I'm suggesting that we should move from prosperity-seeking to happiness-seeking society, from having more goods and stuff to having more friends and having more opportunity to be with nature. And this basically means that we have to change the way in which we measure our well-being itself. And how do we really define our own prosperity, success, progress, etc.? Probably in more specific ways, even if in order to promote those changes, for example, some of the innovation is necessary, but we have been probably paying too much attention to technical aspect of innovation. But we should probably pay more attention to social aspect of change. So social economy, social innovation, they would become more important than before. And likewise, even if financial capital is important, but relatively speaking, people's capital, social capital, those should become more attention now than before. And three, instead of seeking more money, probably we should seek more time, and how those times can be shared with others so that mutual help and collaboration can meaningfully take place. Right, and finally, in some of the places, people may feel very happy to be surrounded by many different kinds of consumer goods, but some people started to feel that that's no longer the case. The enjoying, they feel more joy and happiness by having together with friends and with other people rather than having more stuff. So those are some of the practical suggestions that I have to change the way in which we measure our own happiness and well-being. Right, so the bell is ringing. So thank you very much for your listening, and thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity to have this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saito. We do hope that people are more human have more human approach than a materialistic approach and end such pandemics hereafter. Thank you all for the presentation. It was quite encouraging and effective and interesting also. But what I found was none of the presentation actually spoke about livelihood. So if any of these people who are listening would like to pose questions to the panelists, you are welcome. About 2 minutes each.
Hello.
Yes, Professor John.
Well, I have a few quick questions. Professor Palaniture talked about leadership, and I get an impression that leadership is largely dependent on one's skills and abilities, but then leadership is also mediated by certain other factors like caste, gender, and all that. So what is your take on that? Second, it says, when you talk about people approaching the primary health centers, particularly the government primary health centers, instead of going to the private clinics, I think all over India, in the first round, they had no other option because private carers had not started, taking up COVID patients in their, for treatment. Then another thing is Professor Gopi Reddy's presentation. He talked about village volunteers. I found it very interesting, and I get a feeling that they are paid volunteers, and just like our Kudumbasri, gradually I think they are trying to create a kind of support structure for local bodies. How would you respond to that? And regarding Professor Addy's paper, as well as the paper on Brazil, this is a common question. Latin America is known for its, the existence of a kind of social solidarity economy in that region, in many countries, particularly in some rural areas and so on. To what extent did this social solidarity economy play a role in ameliorating the conditions of people during the COVID-19 pandemic? So these are some quick questions, and that's it. Back to you.
Yes.
Can I respond? This is Dr. Paranidurai. Can I respond? Ma'am?
Yes, Dr. Paranidurai?
Yeah. Dr. Joan has raised a good question. This is about leadership. Because in a country like this, we always considered rulership is a leadership. If somebody is able to manage the conditions, we say that he is a leader. But whereas here in local area, what we found in Tamil Nadu in the COVID situation, a leader is a person who works and with the people. I mean, it is a collective. It is not, a person centric. It is people centric, and it is work centric. This is the most important thing, and it's more in a more transparent way. He works, and or she transforms herself and try to do that activity with others. As a result, a leader builds a trust. So this is the most important thing what we found and noticed in the activities in the rural areas. This is one. The second one is about Bubbly Health Center. You are absolutely right, but it is in the beginning. But continuously, it works even now, because previously, because if you take Kerala scenario, 50% of the people relying on the public institutions, but whereas in Tamil Nadu it is not. But because of the COVID, situation has been changed, and because of the drive, because of the initiative of the panchayat leader, all these things are happening. As a result, people understand the delivery mechanism of the public institutions and establishing linkages even now. So that is why I said that that culture has been changed now. Slowly it is moving towards the public institutions. They rely on the public institutions. Even in the schools also. So that is why I have given the title that the welfare local government. So instead of welfare state, local government becomes welfare centric. So that is the scenario what we have seen in Tamil Nadu. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Gopinath, do you have any answer from Professor John's query?
Not a query, it's just an observation.
But I don't think village volunteers could be equated to Kudumbashri, because these village volunteers only do a door-to-door service, whereas Kudumbashri has more broad objective, I think, as far as I have read the articles on Kudumbashri. But village volunteers can complement PRI once the election starts again, because they have a basic knowledge of the villagers, since they have been working for almost a year. So maybe they could help these whoever is elected in this PRI in effective functioning. Now, will PRIs be able to actually monitor the activities of primary healthcare center is my general question.
In Tamil Nadu, the PRI is not able to monitor, but at the same time there is a mechanism by which they can get the services very effectively.
Oh.
So that is there. So in Tamil Nadu there is a perception. Even among the people, the the public servants, I mean, they're very more effective. I mean, our government believes only the public servants rather than the local bodies. But in such a way it has been created, the services can be effectively utilized by the local bodies. When there is a problem, local body has a power to, I mean, rectify, in the sense that they are not effectively managing, and they can make a complaint to the appropriate authority and take action against the erring officials. In such a way,
But
it
those
is being done.
authorities respond to these local authorities.
Yeah, they are responding.
That's
because
good.
the local authorities' cooperation is needed to show their success, I mean, their achievement and their performance records. So that is why they rely on the support of the local institutions.
Actually, if primary health centers were functioning effectively, then India does not need so many private clinics, even in smaller towns. And this one, if primary healthcare was taken care of completely, only few are functioning effectively. That is the problem.
Yeah, see, I have one issue. Dr. Jayalakshmi, you are right. What my experience is that there, as far as Kerala is concerned, the primary health centers are transferred to the Panchayat Raj institutions. And there are two things we can observe in the Kerala experience. One is that there the primary health centers and sub-centers are relatively performing in a better fashion. This is number one. And number two, what you mentioned, that there, as far as the Kerala is concerned, the private clinics are not performing at that level. They all are concentrating on highly super speciality hospitals at the bigger level. This is there. This is what the Kerala situation, that gives an impression that there you are right. This is situation. I have two questions on the Latin American case. You mentioned that there is a capacity gap, capability gap. And what are the mechanism in the Latin America? There is any mechanism to address the capability gap of the local government? And number two, also it is mentioned that there is a national transfer mechanism. And what is the national transfer mechanism for devolution of fund from the center to the local level? Whether there is any well-established mechanism for that, to do with that there. As far as in the Indian context is concerned, we have a National Finance Commission at the national level, and it has to address the national finance flow from the national to the states and from states to the local. And at the same time, we have a state finance commissions, and state finance commission also is to address this issue of transferring the resource from the state to local. Similar kind of any mechanism in the Latin American countries. Can you give something on that? Thank you.
Yes, Professor John.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Can I
yes.
Answer your question? Can I respond?
Yes.
Yeah. So, see, in fact, in my PhD, I was comparing Brazil and India and Canada also. Three countries I compared. I was working on fiscal federalism. And I have also studied other Latin American countries. So far, there is no country in Latin America where they have institutions like Finance Commission that we have. What is important about the Brazil, particularly because I have worked on Brazil, most of the transfers are constitutional transfers. That everything is included in the constitution, even formula of some of the grants that has to be given to the local government and the states, and states grant to the local governments are included in the Constitution of Brazil, 1988. So Brazil has tried to tackle this problem of transfer mechanism by constitutional method, which is also very, very rigid at times because that doesn't give you much flexibility. Like in Indian case, we have some flexibility because every 5 years we have the Finance Commission, which are responsible for devolution of fund from center to the states based on certain formula. So Brazil does not have this kind of mechanism. So I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, what about the other Latin American countries? I think Professor Eddy can give some explanations on that. What is the situations in other Latin American countries?
Is she there? No, I don't think.
Yeah, she's there.
Well, as Professor Ja said, Latin American countries do not have the same institutions that you in India. So we don't have national finance commissions. So that means that political institutions, such as congresses and parliaments, are those who make decisions about how to allocate resources among subnational governments, regional and locals. So in most Latin American countries, central and federal transfers are allocated based on formulas nowadays. Like 20 years ago, there was a lot of discretionary decisions for allocating resources to subnational governments. Nowadays, we have formula, but most of the time, subnational governments are not very happy about the criteria that is used to allocate resources. And I think that's a kind of a global issue that arises with the COVID crisis, because I think that in most countries all over the world, now subnational governments are claiming for more resources in order to face the challenges that the health and economic crisis are bringing to them. So I think that the issue about fiscal intergovernmental arrangements is going to be one of the one of the most important discussions that we are going to see in the following years all over the world.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can I, because when I was speaking, I think my mic was not functioning. Can I, Vijayalakshmi ma'am, can I answer what you said about?
Yes.
No, you talked about, the health subject.
I was talking about these village volunteers.
I know. I got it. Let me answer that. You also
who could assist the primary, Panchayat Raj institution members.
Yeah, I remember what you asked and what John has asked, but there is also one issue also talked about, that is bringing health subject under the, under the rubric of PRIs. Actually, 11th schedule of the Constitution very clearly says that health also need to be brought under PRS. Unfortunately, it is not being done in Andhra Pradesh. I think that is still pending. It's a big issue because there are, in Kerala and Karnataka, I think some of the states where health sector, particularly management.
Health is part of they are responsible for.
So the point now you are raising is there is a constitutional deficit. By AP government, they are not brought up. Even they are being brought in under PRI. The question is the capacities of PRI leaders to actually manage the issues like health, which is little different. So I think that is still a kind of a gap. We have to work on that. But the point is, village volunteers are coming as a bridge between all these, government and then primary health center and also health functionaries at PHS and ANMs and all that. But the point is that then what is the role of these people in the times to come when actually PRIs become activated after the elections? One has to wait and see. But the experience of last 1 year, we see that there needs to be some complementarity of some of these institutions which have come up recently with that of PRIs. We should not be just banking on PRIs alone, because they have their own what is called limitations in terms of particularly certain sectors which are beyond the capacities of PRS. For example, health. Health is not, it's not a very easy subject. If it is a governance, I think PRS can manage. But if it is health, but if it is a water, some of these issues also need some subject, specialist, and also some of these institutions, there is still place, I believe, but it is still unfolding. We have to wait and see how they become a complementary institutions in the times to come.
No, but what I was mentioning was village volunteers.
Yes.
Having limited this one, 50 houses, and I think they will have data about all the households. So that data could be used by PRIs to help the medical professionals in contact containing diseases, illness, other things.
Yeah, I think that is a very idea, because each volunteer is given 50 houses, but there are something like 10 to 12 volunteers who will be covering entire village. That is in the scheme of things. So they will have full data about not only the health profile of the people, but also the other issues like social sector benefits and so many things. But the question is, now you have to sustain this system. But whether the government will sustain this system, my belief is that having seen this particular system useful, maybe this government may sustain, may continue. But what is the guarantee tomorrow some other government comes and say that this has come just because of executive order?
That is another problem.
Yeah.
Whatever the change in the government, certain things which have been favorable should continue irrespective of the change in government.
Absolutely. That is the times only will tell us. We cannot tell now.
That is what, like Professor Pradip said. It should be more people centric than government. We need more.
You are right. So it is still a gray area. We can't answer. It is still a gray area. We can't answer. Thank you, ma'am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, ma'am?
I think Vijayalakshmi, madam, I think her video as well as audio is not responding.
Okay.
Yeah, shall I raise one question? See, we are talking about the data management or the data collection process. I would like to know some kind of explanation from the Professor Uma, in the sense that whether the local government are capable to manage the data. That is what the major issue in Kerala also we faced, in the sense that their Kerala government, their understanding was it was so difficult task for managing the entire COVID data at the state level. Because of that, they put some kind of collaboration with an international agency to tackle the COVID data management. Whether it is possible at the local level to manage the COVID data, my understanding is that it is capable to do the COVID data, the management of the data, even at the local level, in a better fashion. I think I would like, it will be better if Professor Uma can give some explanation on that. I have another question also from our Japanese scholar, Sainto. Talks about which path to choose. It's a very interesting, very interesting presentation. And I would like to know that in this context, what is actually the understanding and the relevance of the Gandhian philosophy? Because Gandhi had succeeded to decolonize the imagination and the aspirations of Indian mind in that context. So can you think something on the social and economic solidarity and the social capital and really a alternative from the capitalism and the socialist and the communist kind of philosophy and regime. You are thinking, visualizing, and something different. My reading is that you are so close to Gandhian philosophy as far as these issues are concerned. Thank you.
Professor Uma, can you answer? Professor Uma, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. Regarding data management by local government, yes, they can do it, sir, provided we do have the right, the system of collecting personnel who is involved in collecting the data. So when we had in Chennai, there was a door-to-door survey, and people had been going to different wards. So corporation had been effectively managing it from March, April, May, June. I think slowly as the days proceeded, we find there was no consistency, and there was some reluctancy on the part of the personnel to collect the data. So I think it first comes with the corporation as such, the institution as such, trying to use this personnel effectively to collect the data and not just make an entry into the entry books. So that was also visibly the problem, that what kind of people come to collect the data. So when we do it in our research itself, we find what kind of people we send to use our questionnaire, to fill in the questionnaire. So it depends on who are involved in data collection and and things around it. So how the government is effective in using this technology. So it can be done. It can be done, provided we have kind of a framework, we have a formatting, and we have an effective monitoring by the institution on data collection. I think that's my perception about the data collection and why there is a gap and mismanagement of data and so many institutions showing varying data.
Thank you, Professor Uma. Professor Saito, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very glad that you raised this issue of Gandhian philosophy. As suggested by other colleagues, I am now very interested in the possibilities of social and solidarity economy, which has been becoming very popular in Europe and Latin America, but not much in Japan. Even if we do not use that term in Japan, there's a sort of a old-fashioned or historically well-known sort of a proverb for merchants. And this proverb became well-known when the earlier generation of modern merchants were born in Japan. And that says, good merchants has to be good for 3 different stakeholders at the same time. Good for sellers, good for buyers, and good for the society. Now, that means that selling and buying things is not only for the sake of making profits. So it has to contribute to the society. So it was a very old notion, but then it's coming to be revived in the context as of now, because we are coming to be too excessively involved in profit-seeking, competition, and efficiency, and resource allocation, etc. So I think in that sense that resonates a lot with the Gandhian philosophy, and you may be surprised to know that there's a very well-known book on Gandhian economics written by a Japanese scholar in Japanese language recently. So so that's my short answer, and I hope that this is the beginning of the interesting conversation, so that we can learn more about how we can and we should revive some of the original ideas of Gandhi in the contemporary context. Thank you very much, sir.
Vijayalakshmi madam, are you there?
No, there is some problem of connectivity.
Okay.
And you can manage that. Is good, fine.
Yeah, Professor Adi, do you want to add to that? What is the state of affairs? I mean, particularly the social solidarity economy in in Latin America, and then has it been able to, help people in the fight against COVID?
Yeah, the solidarity economy has become kind of very trendy, fashionable issue in the last years in the urban areas. And now, even before the health crisis, it was a very a strong trend to this sort of initiatives. So now this trend has been strengthened because of the pandemic, and we expect. I think that most local governments have developed some measures in order to create this kind of initiatives all over Latin America. In terms of rural areas, I will say that what we call economic solidarity has always been there. I mean, it's the only way that those very poorly developed areas have survived during all these years. In the case of Latin America, the areas with less level of human development are those where indigenous people live. They have always been neglected by left-wing and right-wing political parties. So what we call now economic solidarity is what they have been practicing all these centuries in order to survive. I think that it's something that urban areas and people the people who live in cities are learning about. And the initiatives are good and they are growing everywhere. However, I think that we need to, as Professor Saito said, we need to switch the way that, we think, and thinking more about how the quality of life more than the quality of the physical goods that we have. And I think that's a good beginning. And I hope that we don't have to face something worse than what we are facing now to realize that the change in the way we have been behaving in terms of the environment and in terms of social interaction is going to is actually treating our own lives and the salvation of the humankind. So I think that the economic solidarity is a good beginning, and I hope that we can we can support this kind of initiatives, but that they are really growing everywhere.
Thank you, Professor Adi. I think...
John, I want to add one thing.
Yes, go ahead, Professor Shivana.
Just want Gopinath Reddy's comment.
Yeah.
That how to institutionalize this process of rural youth actually. In Karnataka, we have the act itself. The Gram Panchayats can easily involve the members of youth club, farmers club for the panchayat activities. Anything that is happening. If you are wondering about sustainability of this process, I think they need to formalize the participation in the local process. So in Karnataka now they have the committees are there, youth-led committees. The working groups are there, youth working groups. So if such kind of things takes place, they can be part of the process, and also they can sustain the support giving the systems actually. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I think you are right, Shivana. I also hope that something like that arrangement should evolve. Otherwise, the whole effort of last 1.5 years, I think will go waste. And one more thing is that also depends on the vision of the state government, because state government, once PRS comes into place, what role they foresee for this village volunteer system, In complementing, as you said rightly, in Karnataka, they could able to do it in complementing the PRS, because ultimately PRS are going to stay, not the other systems. Okay, even if they are going to stay, unless you have these arrangements, which have to be done with some kind of a state backing. Otherwise,
actually we have under 61A of the Act.
Yeah, yes.
Gram Panchayats can involve them.
Yes.
For any kind of
Maybe I think our PRI Act also should think something about that. Otherwise, tomorrow some other government will come and say that remove these fellows, like it has happened earlier. So that kind of arrangement, state government are expected
need to formalize or institutionalize both.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Correct. I missed your presentation, Gopi.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. I can say that. I can say
Dr. John, I will just have a small question. Shall I make it?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. You see, I would like to get some kind of explanation from our international scholars, and very particular from the Latin American presentation and the Brazil, because they mention about the overlapping issue of different levels of government. I would like to know whether the very particular in Brazil and other Latin American countries, whether they have mentioned some kind of, to address this kind of issue of overlapping, whether anything of similar like the activity mapping or the responsibility mapping based on a principle of subsidiarity. That means these are the issues and these are the functions and these are the responsibilities can be addressed in the best fashion at the local level. So that functions, responsibilities, powers and functions should be given at the local level. That is what the principle of subsidiarity, whether similar kind of the issue, the concept and operationalization is available, is there in actually in Brazilian context and the other Latin American countries. Thank you.
Dr. Jha.
Let me talk about the health, because in the area of health, there is overlapping because all three levels of the government have the power to act in the area of health. But there is in that local government is responsible for primary health, and then state for secondary health, and then central government for taking care of the finances. So all these three levels have the role in health. So there is overlapping. So this requires a great deal of cooperation and coordination, and often collaboration between three levels of government. And you see, and there have been collaboration, coordination, because Brazil has universal healthcare system, which has been very, very successful. It is known for education, primary educations as well as basic health. Its performance has been very good, but it has not earned good name when it comes to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you don't talk about the pandemic, then Brazil's performance has been very good thanks to the coordination and cooperation between three levels of government. And yes, despite the overlapping, there is separation when it comes to which level of governments should do what in health or in other field. So there is some separation, but there is no watertight separation. So there is a problem that exists, which requires a great deal of coordination.
Thank you, Dr. Jha. Professor Addy, do you want to add to what Dr. Jha said?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, most national constitutions recognize subsidiarity as one of the main principles for coordination among levels of governments. However, what the law says is different from the practice. No? Because as I mentioned, most countries, Brazil is quite an exception within the region, because it's the most decentralized country in fiscal powers and decision-making capacity of local governments. But in general, in Latin American countries, actually local governments are very used to follow the decisions from national and regional governments. So subsidiarity, it's although it's legally and politically, it's a principle of coordination, actually doesn't work in practice. And this is mainly because I will say two factors. The first one is the fiscal arrangements, because the high dependence on central fiscal transfers make very weak local governments in terms that the money that they spend is not their money, it's the money that comes from the central government. And many times those transfers are earmarked, which means that they must be they must be spent on particular programs or projects. And second, because we have a political culture of centralization. So the presidential figure is it's very, very strong. The president of the nation is considered the most important decision maker, and this image is reproduced at the regional and local government level. So I would say that yes, it's most of the time there is no overlapping of responsibilities, because those that are allocated to local governments are basically the provision of public services. Most of the time they are not able to participate in the policy making of national and regional authorities. Most of the time they just operate those policies at the local level, and the room for adapting those policies to the particular and specific situation is really limited.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all the time that we have. I would like to thank Jayalakshmi Madam for chairing the session. We had a very lively session. I would like to thank Professor G. Palnature, Professor Gopinatha Reddy, Professor Adi, Dr. Prakash Chandra Jha, Professor Uma, and Professor Saito for making excellent presentations. And I also thank the participants for actively participating in the interactions. We'll be assembling again at 4:30 in the evening today, and then this will be followed by another session. So by 9:15 we will be ending the evening session. So I welcome you all to join the session as well. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Jose.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Uma, and thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Professor Sandop.
Yes, thank you, Jose.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine. So, yeah, fine.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.